everyone, and welcome to another episode of Gripe, the show for short, sweet movie reviews, plus the one thing that annoyed me the most. And today I'm going to be talking about Alejandro Inarritu's movie The Revenant, starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hardy. So this is a movie that, believe me, I was so excited about because, for one, Inarritu is one of my absolute favorite directors. Movies like 21 Grams, love that movie. Um, Amores Perros, Birdman from last year, for which I think he definitely deserved the Oscar for Best Director. He's just a fantastic director, and even though his movies are depressing as hell, they are just beautifully done movies. And so I was very excited about this when I had heard that not only Leonardo DiCaprio, one of my favorite actors, and Tom Hardy, who's another one of my favorite actors, would be doing this movie for Iñárritu. And then seeing the previews and promos for it, I was just very excited to see what they came up with. So what is The Revenant about? Um, the Revenant is about, it's based on the true story of Hugh Glass, who was a frontiersman in the West during the early 1800s. He was a trapper, fur trader, basically somebody, basically just a frontiersman. He lived out in the woods of like west of Montana, South Dakota, Wyoming, kind of that area, and basically during an expedition with a fur trading company, they get ambushed by some natives who are basically who attacking them obviously for poaching on their land. But then there's also this subplot of one of the elders of the tribe is basically looking for the people who kidnapped his daughter. Um, and so they believe it's these Americans, these white men, um, and they're willing to basically do whatever they can to find them and basically kill them and get the girl back. Um, and in there, they escape from the um, um, the natives basically, and as they're kind of making their way, they're following Hugh Glass because he knows how to get them back to safety basically, and in that process he gets attacked by a bear, and in this bear attack he's left basically nearly dead, and they patch him up and carry him as far as they can, but they run into some weather and they can't move him over the mountain. They have to. There's just no way they can get him over the mountain. So a couple of them decide to stay back and watch him until they can go get help and come back and retrieve him. So he stays with two other men and his son. His son, who's actually it's basically a he had a relationship with a native woman, and so he has this half breed son basically, who obviously is this point of contention in the company because they don't obviously trust him at all. And the two who stay behind are played by Tom Hardy, and the character is Jim Bridger, and I can't remember the actor's name. He was in movies like Chronicles of Narnia, The Maze Runner, Will Poulter. That's it. So, so they stay behind basically to watch him, make sure if he does pass away, that they give him a proper burial and all that. But the Tom Hardy's character doesn't want to really have anything to do with that, so he basically decides to try and kill Leonardo DiCaprio's character and bury him and leave him for dead. And he ends up killing the his son and hiding the body. So the two of them realize, okay, Hugh Glass is dead, and they need to move on and get back and save themselves. But what it turns out is that Hugh Glass was not dead. He was close to death, but he did not actually die. And so he manages to kind of dig himself out of the hole that they throw him into, and just crawl his way to water and food and all that. He can barely walk from the wounds from the bear attack, and he manages to get away even while this native tribe is on his heels. And the story is him kind of regaining his strength and kind of rebuilding himself, being able to cross hundreds of miles of terrain, winter terrain, in order to not only get back to safety but also to take revenge on the guy who killed his son and left him for dead. And all the while, Tom Hardy is this very determined character, just like this he survived a attack himself, and he's like, I'm not going to be going back to that. I'm not going to. That's not going. I'm going to survive, and I'm going to keep pressing forward. And get what's owed to me, basically, because he wants out of the life that he's in, so he's going to do whatever he can, even if it means stealing, lying, cheating, all that stuff to get what he wants. And ultimately, Leonardo DiCaprio, Hugh Glass, manages to steal a horse and make it back to the fort without dying, basically, which is a miracle in a lot of ways. He has to sleep in a horse. There's a kind of like a nomadic. I think it was a Pawnee character who basically took him, kind of took him along with him and helped him out. Really helped kind of heal him. And unfortunately, he meets an end. But it gives Hugh Glass that just kind of last push that he needs to survive. And then when his horse dies, he cuts it out and sleeps inside the horse for shelter, basically. So it's a very brutal movie. It's a very very harsh, realistic movie to watch. And he gets back to the fort, and they realize that Tom Hardy's character lied and stole and all that, and so then it becomes this hunt to try and find him. Donald Gleason, who's been in a lot of movies this year and a lot of good ones too. So I mean, this kid is just definitely nailing pretty much every role he does well. They go out and try and hunt him down, before he gets away and all that. So what did I think of the movie? I was very excited for this movie, like I said, because it's Iñárritu, Leonardo DiCaprio, and just like it looked like a cinematic masterpiece in so many ways, and it was. Like visually, this is one of the most beautiful films I've seen in a long time. They managed to get some, and it reminds me a lot of watching movies like The Thin Red Line. Terrence Malick is a natural filmmaker. He loves using natural light. He loves filming outdoors, nature, just like really capturing the beauty of the natural world. And Iñárritu just does the exact same thing here. There's a scene in the movie Beautiful where it's kind of this dream scene, in the woods in winter and all that. And it almost was like it took that kind of scene and just expanded it into this vast, gorgeous looking movie with amazing cinematography. The acting all across the board is incredible. Not only Leonardo DiCaprio, but also Tom Hardy, Donald Gleason. Some of the other characters. I don't know the names of the actors, but they just did a phenomenal job all around. I mean, the cast, the view, the beauty of it, the look, the direction, all that stuff is just fantastic. And how could I possibly come up with a key gripe for this movie? I'll tell you why. It's not that I didn't like the movie. I thought the movie was beautiful and fantastic in all these different ways. But the problem is that ultimately it is a cliche, just revenge movie. And it is and isn't the story. So, like I said, it's based on a true story. It's based on the real character, Hugh Glass. And the, the the character who he's basically trying to find and get revenge on was also based on a real character. Now, after I saw the movie, I went and kind of looked it up because I was curious to see how accurate it really was. Turns out it's not accurate at all. Because yes, the two, a lot of what happened that set up this kind of vengeance story did happen, but in the end, there's a much different path that it takes. Like the movie here is based on a fictionalized book, whereas reality is based on reality. And the real Hugh Glass ended up dying before this Fitzgerald character, basically. And when you think of that, it's like, okay, so basically they took something that was a real historical event and they changed the ending to make it make it closed and complete and nice and safe, nice safe kind of vengeance movie ending, which I'm not gonna lie, I don't like it, and here's why. There was a movie that came out in like 2004, 2005. I can't remember exactly. It was called Seraphim Falls. It had Liam Neeson and Pierce Brosnan. And when I was watching this movie, I kept thinking about Seraphim Falls. Not because I mean there are some similarities. Both of them take place in like the mountains or in the wet. They're both like westerns. There's winter. I mean there's a lot of things that you could take from both of these movies and say there's a very similar thing here. Seraphim Falls might have even been based on the Hugh Glass story to some degree. But the reason why I'm pulling this in here is because the way Seraphim Falls ends is unexpected. It ends in the whole movie is this like vengeance chase. It's this guy hunting down the man who killed his family basically. And it's like he is going to find this guy, he's going to kill this guy, and that's going to give him the satisfaction he needs. But then the movie ends when the two finally meet each other, and essentially the way that it ends is they go their separate ways. He doesn't kill him. They go their separate ways. And it was such an unexpected ending, and that's why it's something that I actually remember. Like that's why I would remember this movie. That's just like random movie that came out in like 2005 that didn't even get a lot of attention. Probably because the movie itself is so-so, but it had a great ending. And for a movie like this, where there's actually like that's how the historical truth happened, was something like this, and they go with just the straight vengeance story, it takes so much of the impact out of the story. And throughout the entire movie, I kind of knew that this is how they were going to end it. They were going to end it with Leonardo DiCaprio, and Tom Hardy coming face to face, and it's going to be this, like a fist fight or a gunfight, or there'd be something that would, it would come to violence. And that's not what history actually happened. When you can telegraph that this is how it's going to end, it becomes just ordinary and cliche. So even though this movie is beautifully packaged, well acted, and done all that, it ultimately just comes down to it's just a straight vengeance movie. And those are a dime a dozen anymore, is just this straight vengeance story. And for something like The Revenant, the true story is more interesting than the story that they cooked up. The true actual story is way more interesting. And if they had gone kind of the Seraphim Falls route, where they have this unexpected ending, people might not like it nearly as much. People might not be as comfortable with an ending like that, but it gives the movie more impact. It gives more weight to that story that they're building up as this like vengeance tale. And because in the end, I mean, that's almost, more satisfying, of vengeance is like forcing somebody to live with what they've done as opposed to just killing them and saying that's it. I mean, I get that they're trying to portray that the waste, the frontier was a brutal place. Nature, the people, everything about it was brutal. But that doesn't mean that they have to end it with this like brutality. They can show that there was some humanity, because in real history there was that humanity. It did exist. So, I'm not sure what they were trying to say by doing that. And, ultimately it does come down to a very cliche vengeance story, which, I'm not going to say it's a bad movie, because it's a beautiful movie. It's one of the most beautiful movies I've seen in a long time, and it's so well acted, and, so much of it is just, you're so engaged with it, but in the end, you're left going, it's a vengeance story. It's taken with, bears and, trappers and stuff like that. There's it just becomes an ordinary story by the end of it, which I think really hurts the impact. And, it could win a bunch of awards. I'm sure it will win a bunch of awards, but that doesn't mean that I don't think that validates what it was as a movie well enough, because, I mean, it's a beautiful movie. Inarritu deserves all the credit for what he did, but at the end of the day, I think they could have gone with the real story, and it would have been a lot more interesting. So I do fault the movie for that. I do fault them for not taking that risk. Instead, they played it safe. They played the Hollywood vengeance story safely, and that's what we ended up with. So, but overall, a quite good movie, quite mesmerizing movie. I'd give it an 8.5 out of 10 for definitely the visuals, the acting, just because those were top notch. Those were some of the best I've seen in a long time. So, got to give those credit. I just wish they had done more with the story. So, that's my review of The Revenant. So, thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time.